I'm glad Mike mentioned the idea that Valentine's Day is coming up. He was a little bit confused. I want to tell you that I went out to the cemetery the other day and was sitting beside my wife's grave. And I told her, I said, now, Vera, I'm going to buy you a box of chocolates this year for Valentine's Day. And she responded and says, I don't need them. You go ahead and eat them. Now, if you believe that, you know why I'm going to be eating chocolate this coming week. It's good to be here this morning. So much better to look out and see your happy faces than to see your blank pew place. That's it. Being Valentine's Day coming up, I thought an awful lot this week about the teaching of the Bible concerning love. And there was so much material that I really had difficulty, and I still have difficulty as I stand before you right now, to be able to indicate. I wonder if my mic is turned on. Nope. It is now. I have difficulty trying to understand which ones, what to say and how to say it. So this morning, if I ramble on, I do apologize. That there are many, many things I would like to say about love. Well, I don't know whether we fully understand the concepts of biblical teaching of love or not. I would like to take you back in my life to many, many years ago. It was in the 1950s. Mary Alice was born in 58, and it was very shortly after she was born. I moved to Long Island, New York to work along with my brother at the Go-Ye Chapel. And as I was there, I was going to find secular work and be able to help out as much as I can. And I got involved with an insurance company. One of the bigger insurance companies, the Prudential Insurance Company, to be honest with you. And I was training to be an insurance agent. And as I was doing so, there was a fellow there that had just moved in from Greek. His English was very broken. He was one that, great personality, but he and I became friends. And as we were doing the studies, a lot of times he would come to me and say, now, Phil, he says, I don't understand that. And because he was having such a short time trying to understand English, I would go through it and try to teach him the various aspects of the insurance that we were selling and what that particular paragraph might mean. So there was a lot of things that I learned just trying to help him to learn what it was all about. And one of the things that I learned very clearly was that there's an old-time expression. And that expression is the Greeks have a word for it. I knew that the New Testament was written in Greek. And many of the various shades of meaning that we have for one word, the Greek have a different word for each shade of meaning. And through him, I learned that that has not changed. That there are various shades of meaning that we have in our language are expressed in the Greek language with one word. Therefore, when we translate the Greek to the English in the New Testament, there are many, many shades that we need to understand as far as the original language was concerned. And one of those shades of meaning that we talked about quite frequently was the word love. Boy, I tell you, in the English language, when you say, I love that car, or we love that dog, or that cat. I love my grandchildren. I love my great-grandchildren. I love my parents. I love my wife. That word, love, can have 101 different shades of meaning. And the Greeks have a word almost for every shade of meaning of that word. If it's an inanimate object, such as an automobile, they have a word for it. If you're loving a pet, they have a word for it. And now, if you boil it down to the two basic words that are identified in the Bible as love, there are two different words. The one word that we would have would be the idea of agape or agapo. And it is, I'm not going to give you the Greek spelling of it. I could do so if I had to. But the whole idea of agapo is a divine love, a high form of love, of respect. Oftentimes in the Bible, in the King James Version, it's translated as charity, such as in 1 Corinthians, the 13th chapter. The other Greek word that we find is the word phileo. And that means a brotherly love. The city of Philadelphia, for instance, is the city of brotherly love because they use phileo, delphi, two Greek words in order to be able to form that word. Now, every one of us, as human beings, have the phileo love. It is a love that we have simply as a family type love, as a brother and sister type love, as a parent and child life. Every one of us have that. But not everyone has the agape love, because I personally believe, from the teaching of the Word of God, that that particular love can only come as a result of your relationship with God. When God is in you through the person of Jesus Christ, and you are in God through the person of Jesus Christ, then you have the agape type of love. It is interesting to find that when Jesus was ministering, that there was a time that some of the leaders of the Jewish people of that time were trying to trick Jesus. They began to ask him questions. And at the very end of the questioning time, one of the men stood up, who was a lawyer, a scholar, a scribe, and asked him the question, "Master, which is the greatest commandment?" Now, as you think of that for a moment, this particular question is responded in the three synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. There is a slight difference. In one, Jesus gives the answer, and the other, Jesus asks him to give the answer. I don't see where that makes much difference. But Jesus said, "Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy strength, with all thy mind." And he said, this is the greatest commandment. And by the way, he was quoting from Deuteronomy, the 6th chapter, verses 4 through 6. And then he said, the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. And he, again, was quoting from Leviticus, the 19th chapter, the 18th verse. The love that he used there was the word agape. The divine, the high form, the high standard of love that can only come as a result of your relationship with God. We've been talking the past several months, or month and a half, about the idea of the Trinities of the Bible. There's a Trinity there. I don't know whether you saw it or not, but you love God. That's the first part of the Trinity. The second, you love your neighbor. And the third, as yourself. There's a love for self there. Now, I don't believe that this word for self, if it's the agape love, has anything to do with egotism, pride, because pride comes before a fall. But I think every one of us has a love for ourselves. Don't we feed ourselves? If we desire a candy bar, don't we go buy it? If we want to look nice, we go and get nice clothes to wear. And I don't know how many times when my wife was alive, I would look at my wife and say, "Vera, how do I look this morning?" It will always disappoint me when he says, normal. But yet you realize that there is a love for self. How can you love your neighbor as yourself if you do not have self-love? And the second thing I see about this, and you might take me to task on this if you want. I see that these three aspects of the agape love, the love of God, the love of neighbor, the love of self, boil down into one type of love. How can you love God if you don't love your neighbor? How can you love neighbor as yourself if you don't love yourself? And all three of them are interrelated. And the more we love God, the more we love God, the more we do His commandments, the more we serve Him, the greater love we will have for our neighbor and the greater respect we will have for ourselves. And I firmly believe that as you study the Scripture, that it becomes aware that the love of God, that the love that we have for God is the very basis of our relationships here in this life, in this earth. I had difficulty this week of trying to list and separate some of the teachings of God's Word with respect to this love. And I finally gave up. I'm going to tell you, I came to an impasse where I could not begin to say this point, this point, this point. So what I decided to do, something altogether different. I don't think I've ever done this before. The rest of the past time that I'm going to use for my sermon this morning, I'm going to read nothing but Scripture. They're all listed in the paper that you picked up on from the table, and they will be on the screen. And I think as we read this, I'm going to make comment about various things in these Scriptures that will show you the details of the finite concepts of this love. First of all, in the book of Luke, the 10th chapter, when we find that Jesus, this question was asked of Jesus, and Jesus gave the answer, or the young man gave the answer. And Jesus said, "This do, and thou shalt answer well." The young man responded and said, "But Master, who is my neighbor? Who is my neighbor?" I tell you, I have some good neighbors. I appreciate my neighbors. It's interesting. There have been times in my life I really wondered about my neighbors. When I lived in Michigan, serving the church in Milwaukee, Michigan, we had a neighbor that was a real nice guy. And we visited many times, but the only time he was able to come over to visit when he was totally drunk. But he had the most beautiful garden I ever saw. And I don't know how many times I would wake up in the morning and go outside to pick up a newspaper. And it might be tomatoes or cucumbers, beans, out of his garden on my doorstep. Beautiful guy, except for drinking. His name was Feedable. I can remember that much because I called him Mr. Feedable. I didn't know what his first name was. But who is my neighbor? Who is your neighbor? And Jesus gave a parable. One of the better known parables of the Bible. Beginning the 29th verse of the 10th chapter of the book of Luke. That he, willing to justify himself, said unto Jesus, "Who is my neighbor?" And Jesus answered and said, "A certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and fell among thieves, which stripped him of his raiment, and wounded him, and departed, leaving him half dead. And by chance there came a certain priest that way. When he saw him, he passed by on the other side. And likewise a Levite, when he was at the place, came and looked on him, and passed by on the other side." Now I'm going to stop there just for a minute. A priest and a Levite. representing the spiritual leadership of the Jewish nation at that particular time. Both of them had a relationship with the temple. And part of the responsibility of the temple and the spiritual people of that time was to care for those that have need. In fact, priests and Levites were not commanded to give a tithe to the temple. The emphasis that was made, you keep the tithe, and you use that tithe that you would give to the temple, the 10% that you earn as being a priest or a Levite, and you do it good in the community for the cause of the temple. In other words, they had temple money. They had temple money to be able to help this fellow that fell among thieves. But what did they do? They took the easy road. They passed by on the other side. I'm going to tell a story on Steve. He didn't know I was going to do this. But one day when he was a youngster, I really can't recall how old he was, maybe 9, 10 years of age. My wife and I had visited her family down in Portsmouth, Ohio, and we were coming back to Proctorville, where we were living at the time. And as we were coming from Willersburg in Allentown up to the place of Ironton, between those places, there was a car that was broken down. If I recall, it had a flat tire. And we passed by, I don't know which one of the kids made mention, or maybe could have even been my wife. He said, "Phil, do you think we ought to go back and help them?" It was late at night, middle of the night, about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. So I turned around, we went back, found out they had a flat tire. We put the flat tire in the trunk of my car. Came down to Coal Grove where the truck stops were still open, and got his tire fixed up and went back and put the tire on. And they went on their way, and we went on our way. But as we were going home, I remember what Steve said. And a lot of the details are vague in my mind except for this. He said, "Dad, I feel so good that we were able to help them." Doesn't it feel good when you take of your own time, of your own money, to help somebody have need? Yet the priest and the Levite would not do so. And it goes on, it says, "And about a certain Samaritan," all the Jews hated the Samaritans, "as he journeyed came where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion on him, and went to him and bound up his wounds, pouring in oil and wine," which is medication for that day, "and set him on his own beast, and brought him to an inn, and took care of him. And on the morrow when he departed, he took out 2 pence and gave them to the host, and said unto him, Take care of him. And whatsoever thou needest more, spendest more, when I come again, I will repay thee. Now which of these 3 thinkest thou was neighbor unto him that fell among thieves?" And he said, he that showed mercy on him. Then said Jesus, "Go thou and do likewise." Love is responding to a person's need, whether it be physical, financial, spiritual, whatever it may be. 1 Corinthians 13 is identified as the love chapter of the Bible. Understand the word charity, as it's translated here, is the Greek word agapao, which is love. I want you to hear these. "Though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, and have not charity, I become as sounding brass or a tinkling cymbal." This speaking in tongues, if I don't have love in my heart, then what good does it do? Then he goes on and says, "And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith, so that I could remove mountains, and have not charity, I am nothing." And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned, and have not charity, it profiteth me nothing. Understand, though I do the things that love demands, if I don't have true love in my heart, what good is it? What good is it? A lot of people do things just because they're expected to do it. It was strange when I was preaching in Chesapeake. One of the things that we supported there was the community pantry, in which the people of the community were able to get food when they needed food. And every year we were asked to donate so much of this particular item when it came to Christmas time, when it came to Easter time, and some of the other time. And we had one man in the congregation, affiliated with the congregation, that gave it all. He dug in his pocket and gave it all. One day I was talking to him and I asked him what I thanked him for. He said, well, it's expected of me. He didn't show love for those that had need. But we go on. Charity suffereth long and is kind. Charity envieth not. Charity vaunteth not itself, is not puffed up, doth not behave itself unseemly, seeketh not her own, is not easily provoked, thinketh no evil, rejoiceth not in iniquity, but rejoiceth in truth, and beareth all things, believeth all things, hopeth all things, endureth all things. Charity never fails. But whether there be prophecies, they shall fail. Whether there be tongues, they shall cease. Whether there be knowledge, it shall vanish away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when that which is perfect is come, that which is in part shall be done away. When I was a child, I spake as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. For now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then shall I know even as I am also known. And now abide faith, hope, and love, or charity. These three, but the greatest of these is charity. Love. How important. Supersedes, I think, all things because it is the greatest of all Christian virtues. Galatians, the 6th chapter, just quickly says that if a person is overcoming a fault, you which are spiritual, restore such a one as ye in the spirit of meekness. Considering thyself, lest thou also be tempted. Bear ye one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. Wow. You have problems. They're my problems. If you need help, if I can have the funds and the means to do it, I should help you. As simple as that. Passage that I've used down through the years, he says, John says, my little children, let us not love in word, neither in tongue, but in deed and in truth. And I'm going to skip 1 John, the 4th chapter. One of the, I think, the greatest chapters of love that you have. But one of the things I want you to see is in Matthew, the 25th chapter. When Jesus comes and separates the sheep from the goats, the sheep go into heaven, the reward, those that are on the goats are punished. And they shall say, then shall they also answer him, these are the goats. When saw we a hunger, or a thirst, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not minister unto thee? Then shall he answer them, saying, verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye did it not to one of the least of these, did it not to me. And these shall go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into life eternal. Our world today is plagued by deeds of hate. I think of what's going on over in the Middle East. the things that are going on with ISIS and their murder of innocent people. I think of Jordan bombing Iraq. And the one thing that I'm going to say, and I think you will agree with me, what our world needs more than anything else is for people to see love in action. And may it begin here. May it begin here. We have a church that is full of love. We love each other, and I appreciate that. I look forward to coming to church and getting my hugs. Several years ago, after I preached at the church in Racine, Kentucky, I was driving down to Ironton for some reason, I don't know why. But all of a sudden, there was a car came behind me and started to toot the horn. And I looked behind, and I saw the driver just motion like this, like he wanted me to pull over. And I pulled over to find out what was going on. I thought something was wrong with my car. He pulled up behind me, he hopped out of his car, and I hopped out of mine, and I recognized the fellow as being a member of the Racine Christian Church. And right there in the middle of the highway, he threw his arms around my neck and said, "Oh, I'm so glad to see you." And we talked for a long time. Not knowing this, one of the members of the church where I was serving saw us. He says, "Who was that man that you hugged you?" And I told him. He said, "Boy," he said, "that was the time of my life I really enjoyed seeing the love that you had for each other." Let the world see that love. Let the world see the fact that you will lay down your life one for another. Let love be the preeminence of your life. Because God is love. And he that loveth is of God. We're going to be singing our song of invitation, Just As I Am. One verse only. If there's any here that needs to make a decision for Christ, to give their life to Christ, to be able to walk in that love, to show that love, be the light of that love, we invite you to come. Believing, repenting, confessing, and to be baptized, that you might serve him for all your life. Show us.